Brian, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And Brian, this is the Lawnmower Museum. You're the curator, is that right, of the Lawnmower Museum?
The British Lawnmower Museum in sunny Southport.
In sunny Southport. And it hasn't been very sunny today, has it?
No, it hasn't. It's also not in the south, and it's not a port.
Brilliant. Because, I mean, you have so many machines. You've got just a plethora of really interesting lawnmowers. But this particular machine here, what did you do?
The idea was that lots of people take things apart. They never put them back together. So we presented this machine in 350 bits, and James put it together.
Did you give him an instruction book, to say this is how to put it together?
He had the owner's handbook to work to that had an exploded view, and he did really well. Because one of the things is, if you take something apart, you've got a reasonable idea how it goes back together.
Absolutely.
Just presented with the parts, it's not as...
it's like an ethics kit.
Sort of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a 60-year-old lawnmower. It was made by Suffolk. It was an iron foundry. And it was a very popular machine in the 60s, 1950s, 1960s. It would have cost around about £17 brand new.
Wow.
And they were probably one of the most popular machines, petrol machine for domestic garden. And he put it together, put petrol in it, started it up, and then went and cut the grass with it next door.
Brilliant.
Started straight away.
Brilliant.
And it's just to give an idea to people that you can keep things going, and this is one of them.
It's fantastic, love it. So there's a whole book on this then as well.
James brought out a book called The Reassembler.
The Reassembler.
Because he did a book on, he did a stripped a guitar down, he did a record player and a dial telephone. And it's quite an interesting series.
And that was that looks like he's on his series there. Is it Man Lab? I think he had, which was quite a good series.
And it's just an interesting project.
Very good.
It would be great for young people to do that, because sometimes they don't have. When I went to school, I had the privilege of having metalwork classes and woodwork classes, and sadly that's not the case now.
Well, this is, you said that earlier, and as a kid, I know absolutely, we had access certainly to woodwork classes, and I'm really surprised that they've stopped that, and that's sort of gone from the curriculum. In fact, I'm a little disappointed that that's gone from the curriculum, because that's practical engineering.
It is. It's a basic engineering. Just to sometimes you need a spark for a young child to just get interested in something, and to get hold of a spanner and do something with it, and especially if you can take something apart and put it back together. It's for those people that are mechanically minded. They find it a wonderland. Nowadays there's a lot of things that don't have moving parts, and you just press a button and it's not the same thing.
So a lot of things seems now are created in a 3D environment on a computer, and then manufactured offline by a little 3D printer or something along those lines.
It's a different
thing. So the skills of actually sort of turning metal on a lathe and turning wood on a lathe and milling metal, and they all seem to be getting lost.
Especially with the basic engineering of a lawnmower, you can see all the parts moving, you can see how it works. A lot of the things, if it's in a box, it's working, but how does it work? And it just... also, lawn mowing, it's one of those things where it freshly cut grass conjures up picnics on the lawn.
It does. It's summer, isn't it? Absolutely.
So it's a bit of nostalgia along it as well.
Now, you've got some other kit out here as well, which is fantastic to look at. This looks really old here. It's almost like a broom handle with a barrel weight, and then... Perhaps is that a gear inside a housing and a blade, or?
This is one of the early manual lawnmowers. I'm not sure it should be in here in the British Lawnmower Museum, because it's an American manufacture. Everything is cast iron, even the cutter has a 3-blade cutter. It's all gears, because the chain hadn't been invented. Of course, in America the grass is totally different to our climate, so this has got 3 blades, and their grass is sort of a wider blade of grass on theirs than ours. So this is ideally suited for that. The handle, it could have been designed for going down a slope, so it's why it's such a long handle on it.
So this is one of the world's biggest mowers. Again, is this an English mower?
It is an English, made by
the handle's
made
all the way
a company
up here.
by Lloyd's. You need to have reasonable muscles, but originally this machine from the early 1900s, it would have been pulled by a tractor.
Okay,
rather than being pushed.
Rather than being pushed by a handle.
It weighs it weighs £300.
Yes.
But you will get abs to die for if you use it for regularly.
Excellent stuff. It's got a very wide cutting blade on it, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a 36-inch cut, and it'll cut the longer grass, because this one, rather than a lawnmower, it's in between a lawnmower and a grass cutter.
Yeah.
And it'll tackle longer grass.
I could do my elderly mother's lawn with this in about 10 minutes, I think.
Well, yes, it could do.
If I could push it.
And then have a lie down for the rest of the day.
Fantastic. What else have you got here? Let's have a look around.
We've got lawnmowers from the Rich and Famous.
Okay.
This one's from Nicholas Parsons, great guy. Yeah. And this one here is one of Lancashire's special 70 objects. And it belonged to Eric Morecambe.
Eric Morecambe from Morecambe and Wise.
That's correct. And it was collected by the refuse man who went to collect it. And it was just at the time when Eric Morecambe was celebrating the birth of his first baby. He was observed on the lawn writing, "It's a boy in the lawn with weed killer." And I think Bart Simpson copied him a few years later on his birthday, writing Bart, just to immortalise his name for 12 months.
Fantastic. And look at this, we've got a whole engine assembly here that's been cut down into its component parts as well.
This is one of the modern engines manufactured by Kawasaki.
Okay.
And it's really well engineered.
So Brian, now you've seen my robot lawnmower. What have we got here?
Well, they're not dissimilar to yours at all.
Except these work.
Well, they've had a lot of money spent on them. We'll go and have a look at the first one that was made in 1995. That cost £1 million to develop.
Really?
So, there's probably a bit of difference production cost between yours and theirs. And they were sold in the shops for £2,000 each. But nowadays, the production costs are coming down.
Yeah.
They're getting less and less. And it won't be long before I think a lot of people will have a robot lawnmower.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, we had a Flymo. Was it a Qualcast Concorde, I think we had as a kid as well. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, the difference is going to be a robot's not really a lawnmower. It's more a grass cutter.
Yeah, okay, so explain the difference, please. What is the difference between a lawnmower and a grass cutter?
Okay, a lawnmower would have a cylinder blade.
Okay.
And it cuts like scissors.
Right, understood.
So when it cuts the grass, it gives it a clean cut, and it all cuts in one direction. On a rotary mower, which most of the robots are, that cuts more like a scythe, so it thrashes the grass. So you'd get a ripped end. Which will eventually go brown, and it takes longer for the blade of grass to recover if it's ripped. So that's where you won't get a pristine lawn finish from any type of rotary type cutter.
Okay.
But it will cut it and keep it neat and tidy, probably the easiest and the cheapest way.
Okay.
But if you're wanting a perfect lawn, cut close, striped, edges done, it would be a cylinder lawnmower.
A cylinder mower, excellent. Okay. Shall we have a look upstairs?
Sure.
Okay.
So sadly we've lost a lot of the British lawnmower manufacturing, but there are still a few companies that make good quality lawnmowers. This one here is made in Guildford. It was called the Willing Worker. And you probably needed to because it weighs 100 weight. And originally all these machines were painted in dark green, but the more modern ones from 1908 were painted in silver to make them look lighter.
Okay.
But really good quality machine. It would last more than a lifetime. All these machines last more than a lifetime.
Yeah.
They just wanted to make a perfect machine.
Yes, yeah. It's the engineering in it is absolutely magnificent. It really is.
Yeah, this one's made by the Enfield cycle company. It went on to be Royal Enfield.
So was that before they made motorcycles, or?
Oh no, they made motorcycles first. There were quite a few car companies
Yeah.
and motorbike companies that made lawnmowers.
Okay.
There was only one lawnmower company that made a car. We can have a look at it afterwards.
Okay.
So that one was Royal Enfield.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah.
was Dennis, who made all our fire engines.
My goodness, look at that bad boy.
This is one of their smallest machines.
Really?
It weighs about half a ton.
So is this the kind of thing that they would use to do cricket pitches, football pitches, and rugby grounds?
Yes, or a big area.
Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of 1920s.
Yeah.
So in those days, this would be quite expensive.
Right. What kind of mower would you use to do a golf course, for instance?
A golf course would be something like this one. So the difference on this one, there's a lot more blades compared to a domestic one.
Okay.
And it'll give a lot more cuts per yard, so you get a perfect bowling green finish.
Right.
So it's actually called the Ransom's putting green machine. And that was the machine that they used on pretty well every putting green in the country. It was sort of like the workhorse of the industry. The one in front of it was made by a precision engineering company called Jerram and Pearson Precision Engineering. They made all the aluminium castings for Rolls-Royce.
Okay.
And Rolls-Royce bought the company. Sadly, when Rolls-Royce were financial difficulties in the 70s, they closed the company down. Because this machine would have cost about the same price as a house.
What's this then on the side of it?
This would be the points. It's the magneto,
Okay.
which creates the spark for the engine.
Okay.
This one's quite unique. The cooler the engine will run, the longer it will last. And they put this hopper on the top of the cylinder head, and you fill it with water. And when it boils away, you fill it up again.
Really?
But it made the engines last much longer.
So that's basically the cooling system for the cylinder.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then it looks as though you've got two barrels, but in opposing cutting directions here as well.
It's a lot more expensive to make a cutter like this. It's much cheaper to make it in one direction. One advantage of that is you can see how the machine's cutting. You can see how much you've cut, and you can adjust it accordingly just to get it perfect.
Fantastic.
One in the windows made by British Anzani in Hawker City, who make the aeroplanes.
And yes, of course, the Anzani engines. Yeah. And that looks as though it's a ride-on machine.
Yeah,
it's beautiful, isn't it?
It gives an interesting ride over rough areas.
I can imagine it would. Yeah, it's solid wheels. There's no suspension. Oh, there is a bit of suspension in the seat. Yeah.
This one's made by Wilkinson Sword.
Okay.
Has a unique sound. Although they've given exactly the same principle as the inventor Edward Budding in 1830, they used a flexible blade that cuts at a completely different angle to any other lawnmower, and it'll cut long wet grass and last forever.
Okay.
Sadly, it was around about £10 in the 60s,
okay,
and that was really expensive. So not many people bought them, but it's a great mower. And also, it will last forever.
That sounds like razor blades.
If we're looking at environmentally friendly machines, you're looking at it. You buy the once, it lasts you a lifetime, and it's also a healthy exercise.
Indeed, yeah. I must admit we have one of these at our house as well, but it's a slightly more modern. I think it's a Black & Decker, probably made in China. Not quite as well put together as this one. Very, very nice. Oh, look at this. So this is to stop the cable from getting caught in the mower.
That's right. When you get to the edge of the lawn and turn round, you swing it to the other side, and the cable's out the way. Nowadays, they just, because it's costs a little bit more to have one of those on it. They'll say perhaps just put the cable over your shoulder. And when we stripped this machine down, because remember this is a time when not everybody had electric in their homes, and it came to us as one mass of rust. When we stripped it down, this is a switch mechanism, which is made out of wood and copper. And this part here, which would normally be a toolbox, but what it is a counterbalance. Because the motor's not just quite in the centre, they put this counterbalance, so when that rolls, it's a perfect roll.
Okay.
It's a great machine.
Fantastic. Brian just showed me this. And this is a robot lawnmower, very similar to the one that I've had a go at making. But this one has got a solar panel on the top of it. Tell us a little bit about it.
So this was the first one that was made. It came out onto the market in 1995. Cost £1 million to develop, and they were sold in the shops for £2,000 each. Just works totally on daylight, and these solar panels are the same as what's fitted on the space shuttle. And it'll wander around like a sheep. It senses the longer grass. When it's cut all the grass in that area, it'll wander off to the next part, cut the grass there. And of course we're on the second generation of robot lawnmowers now that'll do it in straight lines. You can program it to just come out when you want, and you can even control it by Alexa and say, Alexa, the grass wants cutting, and off it'll go.
500,000 people's mowers just...
well, they've all got a code to put in, okay. And they're pretty well silent unless somebody steals one, yeah. And then an alarm will go off on it. And because a lot of them are guided by GPS, if one is taken out of its home, then the police can track it to its final destination.
So they know who's stolen it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's amazing. What an amazing piece of kit. Thanks ever so much.
It's a unique piece of engineering and a brand new invention. They did make robot or remote control mowers in the 1950s, but it was based on an ordinary petrol mower, cylinder mower, on a remote control. Yeah. And the problem was, if the signal was lost, it would go through your flower bed, through the garden fence, and never be seen again.
Through the neighbour's flower bed and the neighbour's flower bed.
It took them about 45 years to get them so they're 100% safe, and that's why the technology took so long. The next generation is this one, and that'll do it in straight lines.
Yeah. And, so that's, as you say, GPS guided then. It's got some sensors on the front of it, yes. I can see there.
Well, this one's from 2000, so this is, in robot mower terms, is quite an
still
old
young.
Technology now.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, it's young in lawnmower years.
Sorry, yes, you were quite correct. It's an old technology, absolutely, yes.
The technology is moving so quickly on robots. Yeah. And the original design for that, because these were made in Israel, and the original design was to go into houses to look for bombs.
Oh, really?
And from that technology, they made the robot lawnmower. They did a robot hoover that goes around your house, and also a golf caddy that just follows you around. This is the only lawnmower company that made a car. Lots of car manufacturers, motorbike companies made lawnmowers, and ATCO made this in 1939. And the idea was it's going to change the whole of the British motoring industry. They're going to put one of these cars in every single school in the country so that a young person could learn to drive, maintain and repair a car before they went on the road. And the kids that went in it were just absolutely besotted with cars, because perhaps the parents didn't even have a car then. Sadly, World War II broke out after only a few months. They only managed to make about 200. But the privileged kids that went in it went on to be Grand Prix drivers and Le Mans winners, and in the 1950s and 1960s. So it's a great piece of machinery, and it's the petrol engine. It's their 1939 lawnmower put in the boot. It's got all the pedals on it. It's got gears. You can go forward and reverse, And you cannot wipe the smile off your face when you're driving it. It's raw power.
Have you driven it?
I have, yeah. It's a great.
So I hadn't sort of cottoned on to the fact that it actually had an engine in it. So it has an engine in it.
Yes, it's a petrol engine. Boasts 70 miles to the gallon.
That's pretty good going. Yeah.
Top speed of 10 mile an hour, and you wouldn't want to go any quicker than that.
10 mile an hour. Yeah.
It's quite quick.
Starts getting a bit wobbly, does it?
Yeah. Well, it's a great machine. Yeah. We can just show them how it works.
Fantastic. So thank you ever so much for a great show around your museum here, Brian. And just for those that might be interested in coming to visit the museum, Brian has kindly offered a ticket for 2 people. So pop your comments in the comments section down below. If you're interested in this ticket, we'll draw names from a hat, and this ticket could well be in the post on its way to you, so that you can come and visit the Lawnmower Museum here in Southport.
The museum is open every day except Sundays.
Okay.
You'd be very welcome to visit. I'm sure you'll find it a unique experience and a cut above the rest. And when you've gone, you'll have thoughts of thinking things for Evermower.
Evermower, very good, very good. Excellent, excellent. Thank you ever so much, Brian. Really
Pleasure.
Nice. Really nice. Thanks. Cheers.